Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, October 1st, 2020, Montgomery County Council meeting. And as we begin, Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Good afternoon, council members. Yes, Council President. Items 2 and 3, the staff person is Ms. Myhill. That is all, Council President.
Thank you very much. And this afternoon, their first item is the briefing from the Board of Elections. Usually during normal times, and I think we can all agree that these are not usual or normal times, this would have been an update from the Board of Elections to the Government Operations Committee, of which Councilmember Navarro is the chair. So I'm going to ask her to begin this afternoon on this topic, and then we will take it from there. Councilmember Navarro, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. As you said, usually we do have a briefing right before election, and then of course we have a post-election briefing. Obviously, these are interesting times, so I would like to begin by thanking our guests from the Board of Elections for being here today and for all their hard work throughout this crisis. As GO Chair, I would like to take a moment of personal privilege to address why it is that we're here today. Ever since the beginning of the pandemic, it was clear that no institution would be able to function normally for quite some time. Unfortunately, this includes our electoral process as well. Changes are needed in order to ensure that everyone who can vote is able to vote with minimal risk to their health and without putting their friends and neighbors at risk. While we would all like to see the governor actually use lessons learned from the primary election and create a stronger all mail-in general election, we cannot continue to dwell on the might have been. We have to move forward. Our Board of Elections must be properly empowered and supported if we are to make this hybrid system work for most people. We all have questions about what the immediate future looks like, and I think I speak for all my colleagues when I say that we are truly appreciative of the thoughtful answers provided by the board staff to the questions which we submitted in advance of today's briefing. I want this process to be as transparent as possible, and I am heartened to see the willingness to work with us that the Board of Elections has demonstrated. It is my hope that after today's briefing, our residents can feel as confident as we do in the integrity of our democratic system and in the measures being taken to ensure that every vote is counted and every voter is as safe as possible. As I said earlier, Mr. President, we have forwarded a number of questions. I know my colleagues also have a lot of questions. But again, I think it is very important to recognize that our Board of Elections, both the members of the board, but also staff, have been very diligent and working quite hard to provide as much direction, guidance, and outreach so that every voter in Montgomery County that is able to exercise that very important civic duty can do so in a safe and effective manner. So with that, I'll turn it over to you so that hopefully we can then begin our conversation. I also want to particularly thank Councilmember Glass, who actually had written to you and everyone saying, hey, we do need to have this update. And again, I'm glad that we're doing as a council as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. And I, too, want to thank Councilmember Glass. But before we get to Councilmember Glass, I am going to ask the chair of the Board of Elections, Mr. Jim Shalik, if he would like to say a few words.
Thank you, President Katz. And Councilwoman, thank you for your leadership and support over the 5 years that I've been president. I just want to introduce our board members that are on this briefing. And I see David Naiman is here, and Elise Barnes, Alan Banoff. Hi, Alan. We have Allison McLaughlin, our deputy director, and Gilberto, or as you know him, Dr. Z Zalea on the meeting. Just a brief overview so that people that are watching can learn more about the process. I'm at the Board of Elections and it's cooking over here, Mr. President. They're lined up at our drop box. They're waiting to get in. As of yesterday, we've had 325,998 requests for ballots. And we have processed and sent to the state all but about 50,000 that are being worked on now. Once we send them to the state will then send out the ballots. Many people have gotten ballots. As a matter of fact, as we talk, we have received 4,293 votes. So it's starting to come in, and it's going to pick up very, very heavy. The basic plan that we have is I think, a good plan under the circumstances. It's secure, safe. The first component is people can mail their ballots, and they've already requested 326,000 ballots, so I'm expecting maybe 500,000 votes. People can drop them at drop boxes. We're going to have 50 drop boxes around the county. Today, we have about 25 that are open and taking ballots. We will start picking them up once, twice a day, and more often with bipartisan teams. So the drop boxes are secure for someone that doesn't want to use the postal service. And we will have eventually 50 drop boxes around the county at the early voting sites, high schools, and other facilities. Then we go to early voting. October 26th through November 2nd, we have the 11 early voting sites that we had in the last election, not this primary, but the last cycle. And we have expanded the hours from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And any voter in the county can vote at any one of the 11 early voting sites. Then on election day, we keep in place the 11 early voting sites, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and we add 25 high schools and White Oak, Nancy Dasick, and the Marriott Conference Center. So on election day, we will have 39 vote centers where any voter can vote at any one of the 39. There'll be plenty of protective gear. Face masks are required. We'll be cleaning, sanitized. I just want to, as strongly as I can, say that this will be a safe, secure election. And our board is dedicated to making sure that every vote is counted. Our board, our staff, they're the best. And I want everybody to have confidence that this is going to work. I've covered the overview. I know David, I'd asked David Naiman to cover some issues that I haven't. David, are you on?
He is. I can see him. I can see David.
Yeah, David may want to cover some of the other aspects of this, but certainly any questions later, we're happy to answer.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to call on David next. But first off, let me very publicly say thank you to you and to the entire board and your entire staff for all of your hard work. You know, many times we take this for granted because everybody believes that everything is always done by magic. You know, nobody has to perform this work. It just happens. But we are certainly understanding that that is not the case. And we know, especially in this election, how difficult it has been, how difficult it could be, but we are very comfortable knowing that you and everyone associated with the Board of Elections is doing all that you can possibly do. And with that, Mr. David Naiman, please.
Thank you, President Katz and Jim, and thanks to all of you for your support of the Board of Elections over the years, which we really, really appreciate. I've been asked to address a few questions that on behalf of the board, and then share with you some of the questions that I've been hearing from voters. First, we want to very much thank the Department of Technology Services for setting up the text system. As you may know, there's a number of texts you can do to 77788 in order to get information about the election. You can find out where your drop boxes are. You can find out where the early voting sites are. If you text HELP to 77788, it will give you a list of all of the available commands. Obviously, as Jim pointed out, people have a choice of whether to vote by mail or in person. If you request a ballot by mail, it is much better to ask that it be delivered by U.S. mail and not to print it online unless you need to, because if you do, the voter is responsible for addressing the envelope, paying the postage, It saves on cost, and it also allows the count to be done faster and more easily. And if you do vote by mail, either by receiving your ballot by internet or U.S. mail, you can still take your ballot to one of the drop boxes or to a mailbox. A question that I've gotten a lot, and I'm glad to be able to talk about today is you can't come to the polling place and trade in your ballot at the polls. If you have an issue with your ballot, let's say that you make a mistake on your ballot, you can contact the staff at the board, and there are ways to cure these problems. I will tell you the one thing you shouldn't do if you make a mistake on your ballot is fix it and initial it, because if you put any marking on the ballot that says who you are, including your initials, we are required to throw it out. If you do make a mistake and you simply correct it, then the board will determine what your intent was. If you want to get a new ballot, you can get it from the board. If you go to the polls after you've asked for a ballot in the mail, you'll be voting a provisional ballot, and that obviously takes more time. The deadline to request a ballot by mail is Tuesday, October 20th, but there's really no reason to wait. Early voting is Monday, October 26th through Monday, November 2nd, and as Jim told you, the hours every day from October 26th through Election Day, November 3rd, is 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We urge you not to wait. Vote as early as possible. That gives voters time to cure any defects, such as forgetting to sign the oath on the mail-in ballot. It will enable voters to see online that their ballot has been received by the Board of Elections, and it will help us to complete the count as early as possible. As you guys know, but not everyone knows, election results are not final on election night. That's not just this year, that's every year. Ballots can arrive up to 10 days after Election Day if they are postmarked by Election Day. So this year, if it's postmarked by November 3rd and received by 10 o'clock on Friday, November 13th, it is a ballot that is on time. In 2016, we did not certify the election until December the 7th. Our staff is working very hard and very well, and thank you for all the accolades that you all have already given them. And I am especially impressed by the many things they're doing to make in-person voting as safe as possible. I thank God for the heroes who have volunteered to serve as election judges this year. But all of us are human, and our job as board members is to make voting as easy as possible for all eligible voters in the county. Like you, I get election questions from a wide variety of people, and I do my best to answer them promptly. I also try to fix problems and make suggestions for how things can be done better, which I feel is especially important given this year's very important election, very challenging circumstances, and expected very high turnout. Jim Shalik and I generally get along, but we disagree about a few things, including the role of the board. He said that the decision about where in the county drop boxes should be located should be left to the elections director as an administrative matter. I believe that drop boxes are essentially mini polling places, and I'm concerned that decisions about them were made, to my knowledge, without input from board members, despite our being available to give such input. I'm not saying there's a problem with the locations. I am saying there's a problem with the process. Last week, Jim said that a number of my concerns were micromanagement, and I should save my concerns and criticisms for after the election. I'm going to repeat that. He suggested that I save my concerns and criticisms for after the election. I told him that was laughable and that I would continue to make suggestions for this year's very important election. Here's some of what I've learned from voters. I've heard complaints that voters have trouble finding information on our website. I think it's much better than it was. As you know, our job is not only to run elections, but also to inform the public about them. As an example, I want to thank Councilmember Friedson, who is my district council member. He was kind enough to send his constituents, including me, a list of all the approved drop boxes in the county and when they were expected to be installed on August 31. But that list wasn't posted on the board's website until 10 days later, during a period when people had just received their mail-in ballot applications in the mail, and they were deciding whether to request mail-in ballots, and the Postal Service was, very much in the news. That list is now available on the website and in the sample ballot that was sent to all active voters, but it still does not include 3 of our drop boxes in senior communities that are limited to residents who live there. Last night, I heard that voters were having trouble finding the drop box at Boer Park in Gaithersburg. That drop box was right outside the front door for the primary, but is now located in a much harder to find location in a corner parking lot near the swimming pool, which probably isn't getting much use in October and November. I don't know why the location was changed. To my knowledge, the board was not consulted. If it were a polling place, it would have been illegal for us to change its location between the primary and the general election absent a serious emergency. I don't know whether Dropbox locations were changed in other locations. I've heard concerns about whether the public will get appropriate access to our vote canvas. As you know, it's our job to count the votes in a fair and transparent fashion so that the public can be confident in the results. I have great confidence in the honesty of our staff, our canvass workers, and board members in both parties. But I do have serious concerns about our staff's proposals, at least what I know about them, to severely limit access to our vote canvas, which I believe will only encourage election-related conspiracy theories, possibly on both sides of the aisle. So those are some of the concerns. I think things are generally going well. I do want you to know about some of the challenges, and I'm happy to discuss these and other issues with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shallak, did you or anybody from your staff have any additional comments?
Well, I just wanted to say that when we first got this new plan from the state board and the governor's approval, we were concerned about people stepping up to be judges. That has turned out not to be the case. People in this county have stepped up big time. We're going to have 3,419 judges for early voting. And on election day, because it's only one day, we're going to have 2,200 election judges. People have stepped up. We're still looking for Republican judges and bilingual judges because a lot of our functions have to be bipartisan. So we're still recruiting Republican and multilingual judges, but we're going to be fully staffed. So people have stepped up, and I want to thank the public for doing that.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions. First off, I too have gotten complaints, concerns about Boer Park, the moving of the ballot box from where in fact, I had dropped off my primary ballot at that box. Can you give a reason why it was moved?
Allison McLaughlin on the call?
Sure.
Yes,
yeah, I know that drop box was moved at the request of the facility, and I don't remember whether that was because of the camera angle or whether that was because of a traffic flow concern in the front entrance. I think it was the camera angle, but I'm actually texting staff right now to confirm why it was that we moved that location. I don't remember offhand.
Well, and if it was because the city of Gaithersburg asked it to be moved and you all are not in agreement with that, then we can certainly follow up with them. But at the very least, there should be a sign up where it was to let people know where it is. I mean, from what I understand, I know that facility very, very well, and it would not be visible from the road when you drive in. It was before. So I think something needs to be done on that for that instance. But I will wait to hear what the reasoning was, please.
And I think that's a great idea. I can definitely follow up on that. We've had the last 24 hours, the concern that we've been getting about the drop boxes has been voters thinking that it was locked because there's a rain flap where the slot is. And so we've just been discussing ways to do some signage by the drop boxes to make it clear where the ballot is supposed to be placed in the drop box. I'm sure similarly, as we begin to get questions, I haven't personally fielded one about the Boer Park one yet, but I'm sure that's coming. And so as we get questions, we can address those issues with signage.
And of course, I want to be clear that I think the best idea would be to move the box back where it was to be so visible. Somebody, was it David?
Council member, if I just say very briefly, there are some signs apparently up. Someone sent me a photograph of them, but the box is still in like a corner parking lot that you would ordinarily not use at all. And I also would say that if the city was asking for it to be moved, that would have been a really good occasion to tell board members, because we have our own relationships in addition, obviously, to President Katz has a very strong relationship with the city. We have our relationships with the city as well, and would have been happy to weigh in, because I think all of you who've been on the ballot know that moving the location of where you drop off your ballot can have a very serious effect.
Okay.
And actually,
I wanna chime in.
Gilberto has an answer to the question about the drop box at Borough
Okay.
Park. He's familiar with that one.
Yes, so I was there actually less than 24 hours ago yesterday looking at the security protocols for early voting. And as per the staff, it was moved to avoid voters and patrons using Borough Park from being hit by automobiles, because there was a lot of foot traffic during the primaries. And this is as per the staff manager at Gaithersburg Borough Park yesterday afternoon during my visit, because I asked the same question.
And
And I don't know if you just saw me put up here, but apparently this is the sign that we have now put out. I don't know if you can see it on my screen, but we have now put up a sign that says early voting drop box in front of Water Park. So staff is ahead of me even being aware of it.
And we're in the process of translating that into Spanish as well, because it's only in English.
Okay.
there obviously would have been other ways to address the traffic. We've been talking as a board for some time about trying to help voters who just want to drop off ballots at the drop box by having people available to take their ballots and put them in the drop box without them leaving their cars. Ideally, we would have had drop boxes that you could use from your car, but apparently that's not what the state ordered.
Thank you. And there again, I do want to follow up on that. And I do think that we could talk to the city and figure out another spot. That's 54 acres, I believe, in that park. So I'd like to follow up with the city to find out if there's a place where that drop box could be moved to be safer, but it's still very visible. And could you just mention, before I go to Councilmember Glass, could you just mention what the concern was about the cameras?
Yes, in order for us to achieve the 24-hour surveillance on every one of the drop boxes, we have a limited number of locations where we can do that. And we also need to make sure that the box is positioned so that the camera can see the slot.
Okay. Well,
So that constrains
follow up
our
on that as well.
flexibility.
Thank you.
But we
Councilmember Glass.
did have it in the primary at that location, so clearly we were able to do that.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. And thank you to the GO Committee Chair, Ms. Navarro, for agreeing to elevate this conversation to the entire council. And I want to thank the Board of Elections and its staff for the tireless work that each of you are doing in the run-up to this election. These are very difficult times, and we all appreciate the long days and nights that you are doing this work to get us ready for November 3rd. And ultimately, all of the responsibilities of state and local government, there are no duties that are more important, I think, than ensuring a free and fair election. And that's really what we're here to talk about. And we all know that this upcoming election is likely going to have the highest turnout ever here in Montgomery County, or at least in recent memory. And as was mentioned, as of today, there are 283,000 Montgomery County residents who've requested a mail-in ballot. And 4 years ago, I think that number was somewhere around 50,000. So we know that demand is huge, and we have to ensure that our capacity to safely process all of those ballots, that should be our number one priority. And every day, nearly every hour, I'm receiving correspondence, be it email, tweet, or DM, with voters expressing their concerns and asking questions. And so this conversation, this public conversation right now, is really going to help everybody know the ins and outs of this election, and hopefully will make them feel a little bit more secure about Montgomery County's applications of this election. And so, I want to start out by reiterating a comment that Mr. Naiman said in his opening comments. And it's something, we have to make sure people understand, because there's been misinformation from the highest levels of this country that the election here in Montgomery County, the results are not certified until 10 days after the election. And that is to ensure that every different type of ballot.
Later than that, council member.
Later than that. Thank
10 days after the election is when we have to receive the
Mr. Nanda,
ballot.
thank you, but this is Councilmember Glass's time. Thank you.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you. And so there is time that we will have to wait and after November 3rd to ensure that every vote is counted accurately. And I suspect that Board of Elections and governments across the country will be doing the exact same thing. And so my first question, Mr. Shalik, in your opening comments, you talked about election judges. And I know that there were some concerns early on about the lack of individuals stepping up to be election judges. And I'm glad to hear your update that thousands of Montgomery County residents have stepped up to serve as election judges. And some of them have reached out to me expressing concern because they want to make sure that the process runs smoothly and that the process also takes into account personal safety. And can you and staff share with us what steps are being taken to protect election judges, staff, and those who decide to vote in person, either early voting or on November 3rd?
Oh, Jim, you're muted.
No, thank you, Councilman. That's a priority for us, the safety and the health of our workers and voters. We're going to have all the equipment we need, but Allison, you want to be more specific about, the shields and the equipment that we've ordered?
Yes, we and the decisions that were made by the state early on in terms of the number of sites we were going to have and how we were going to set up the sites. There was, of course, the concern about how many election judges would be willing, but as I'm sure you'll all remember, at a certain point, we were very concerned about whether we were going to be able to get adequate personal protective equipment for people, our ability to set up things like plexiglass shields at the polling places. And so it has been easier to do that with the reduced number of the vote centers that we're using. And so we certainly have masks, and those masks are required, not only for the election judges, but for the voters as well. We have the face shields for any election judge who chooses to wear them, and certainly for the election judges who are working outside or who are working in the areas of a polling place where they're circulating around the building, then those face shields are, certainly help give our election judges confidence and a comfort level to perform those duties. For the election judges who are seated at a desk, we do have plexiglass shields that are up. Or plexiglass screens, large plexiglass screens that are up for that communication to be occurring through the plexiglass to provide that additional level of safety and security for the election judges who are seated at that desk. So the masks, we also have gloves available to the extent that those are useful for people to use. Although, of course, we don't want anyone to have a false sense of security that a glove is achieving a level of safety that it does not. So hand washing and hand sanitizer, we're of course making sure that the bathrooms are equipped and that we have lots of hand sanitizer available for use. And distancing, social distancing is of course the biggest thing next to the gloves or next to the masks, in terms of assuring safety for our election judges and for voters. And so one of the big benefits we're getting out of moving into high schools and recreation centers for our early voting sites and for the election day locations is the ability to space our equipment out. Instead of having 2 poll books at a 6-foot table, we have 1 poll book at a 6-foot table, which means that the check-in area of the room expands. We have the voting booths themselves spaced throughout the room so that we have the 6 feet of distancing at all times. We also have room capacity that we've established in terms of the number of voters who are able to enter the voting area at any one time. And we have election judges who are policing that limit. And so one of the biggest things that voters are going to experience when they go up to a vote center is that any line that develops is going to look longer than it normally would. As voters are distanced, then 100-foot electioneering boundary, really with 6 feet of distancing, only has room for about 16 people. So the lines will move, but the lines will be long, and we should all expect that the lines will be long because of the rate at which we are going to be able to move voters through the process and because of the distancing that's required for safety.
Sure, I appreciate that, and thank you for spelling out the safety precautions that you are going to be taking and that that those who are going to be voting in person and the election judges what they can expect when they go through that process. And Ms. McLaughlin, you mentioned also the social distancing and the spacing out, and that leads to the next question that I have, and I'll direct this at Mr. Shalik again. I noticed on the website, on the Board of Elections website, in all the list of the polling places, there's one location in particular that lists two different polling places, and that one is at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. And the two different polling places listed there are one in the gym and one in the cafeteria. And I'm curious if you are using both the gym and the cafeteria in any other schools throughout the county, and if so, how were those decisions made? Which schools would have multiple sites within those facilities?
Yeah, that decision was made basically because of space requirements. I know Allison, the staff, determined to use the two different areas in the school. And if you can explain that. I also want to say one thing, Councilman. In terms of voters, if someone shows up without a mask, we'll have a mask for them. But if there's an issue and they refuse to wear a mask, they will be able to vote, but outside of the voting center. We're not going to let you in if you don't have a mask. So we hope that's not going to be an issue. You can vote, but we'll take you to an area outside of the voting center.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I think that's something really important for people to know of any political persuasion, that you have to be wearing a mask in order to vote inside. Otherwise, you will be told to vote outside the facility.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that. Now, with regard to BCC or any of the other schools.
Yeah, and I appreciate that there's confusion that arises because of BCC in particular. When voters look at our sample ballot or look at the material that we've been circulating, it only lists Bethesda Chevy Chase High School once, and that's the same is true of the other high schools as well. And the reality of it is that we will be expanding in a number of different locations, and we're still working out some of that. Like, so for example, at the Silver Spring Civic Building, we normally just use the Great Hall, but we're trying to expand our footprint as much as possible, and so we're still working through the schematics of how we're going to set that space up and where we can we expand the poll books into the other rooms that are there, or even into that front lobby area and work through security issues. So a lot of that is still a work in progress, but one of the concerns with Bethesda Chevy Chase High School was that our ability to use both the gym and the cafeteria required us to situate the routers that we use to connect the poll books into two different locations. And so there was kind of a technical reason why we needed to give two sites. We needed to set up two sets of routers for that location in particular. And so, yes, we are contemplating using both the gym and the cafeteria at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. We're not
You're on mute. There you go.
We're not precluded from doing that at other locations, except to the extent that the technical setup with the poll books is a challenge. And now Councilmember Glass is muted.
Councilmember Glass.
Someone keeps muting us. Okay, the gremlins within Zoom. So, I just wanted to make sure I appreciated the clarification. Just wanted to make sure that every voter in Montgomery County has access to vote, and that there is no special treatment for any part of Montgomery County, and the overwhelming turnout that we expect will be accommodating as much as possible. Mr. President, I'll just close on this. I'll yield back. I know everyone has questions. We know that voters are eager to cast their ballots. Hundreds of thousands have already requested ballots, and we know that many more are going to be coming in. And above all, it is our responsibility to make sure that every ballot is safely provided to voters, and that each of their decisions through those ballots are safely and accurately counted. Because from my perspective, our democracy is on the line. And here in Montgomery County, we have to do everything we can to make sure that the voice of the voters is heard. So thank you to all the Board of Elections board members, especially the staff. I see you online answering questions at all days and all nights. And so I applaud you for your community engagement and for helping shed some light onto this process for all the voters. And I yield back, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to take a little bit of time to ask about just the information sharing, because there's no doubt that with all the different ways that you can vote, people are still trying to figure it out. If I do get the ballot, then where do I drop it? How many drop boxes? Where are the drop boxes? If I want to vote early, then, where do I go? And so in terms of infographics or things of that sort, I was really curious about how that's going. I don't know if Mr. Celaya maybe can shed some light on that. I know there's also texting capacity, and I think I heard something about an app, which I think would be amazing. So I wanted Dr. Celaya to maybe share with us, and then also to make sure that we get, whatever tools you have as soon as possible so we can amplify that information and make sure that our constituents have a particular plan and know exactly where to go, what are the ways that you can exercise your right of vote, and all of that.
So thank you so much, Councilmember Navarro, and all the council members for supporting us through this journey. Yes, she is correct. After the 2018 elections and after every elections, we look at lessons learned and best practices. And one of the things that we looked is obviously the digital divide, and that not everyone has a laptop or a desktop or Wi-Fi, but a vast majority do have cell phones. And so the development of texting was part of an extension of our outreach. And then we were blessed to leverage Department of Technology Services to do the programming, because we're not programmers, we're administrators. So moving forward, on top of that, we've also are in the process, we're beta testing right now, the MoCo Votes app, which we received a NACO award as well. It was ready to be launched for the primary, but then COVID-19 came, and there was not enough time to do all the changes as it pertains to programming. But we're moving forward. So the goal is by next week, the hope is that we have a full vetted, tested, beta tested MoCo Votes app. And once that is ready, we will announce it. We will do a launch, and we will share this with you as well. Also in the sample ballot sprinkled is the texting prompts, whether it's box or buzón, whether it's EV for early voting in the zip code, or VA, votación anticipada, in the zip code. So we have that corresponding relationship to extend the services. So it's much quicker to get it from your phone as opposed to clicking on our website and going through the different tabs to get the information. We'll share this as well with the council if you could help disseminate this to the community. Also, we have finalized on Monday our FAQs in different languages as we did in the primaries. We have done extensive Zoom sessions. I feel like I've met all of you multiple times, over the past couple of weeks via Zoom. Even today, we did one with the Vietnamese Mutual Association to do kind of a walkthrough nuts to bolts with the Vietnamese American community. And we do respect the fact that Montgomery County has 4 out of the 10 most diverse cities in America, which is Gaithersburg, Silver Spring, Rockville, and Germantown. But of course, we do recognize within that fold parts of Aspen Hill, Glenmont, Wheaton, and White Oak. So having said that, we also received recently, and piggyback with the MoCo Votes app, a recognition for a diverse, multi-generational outreach as it pertains to engaging the electorate. And in addition, many of you have shared all of our multiple language postings on social media pertaining different vignettes as it pertains to infographics, because there's so many nuances and changes. There's a lot of information. So if you could share all of our infographics, they're cute, whether they have a crab with a pen, not to use a marker, information taking individuals to our corresponding websites as it pertains to the ballot drop box or serving as a poll worker, etc. So if you could circulate that, that will also amplify our ability to evangelize to the electorate. And then lastly, just making those relationships. If you hear there's a need with a particular community, by all means, you all have my information. I am here to serve. I'm pretty much Zooming 5 to 6 times a day, obviously, and we've been leveraging the State Board of Elections. I'm also piggybacking as their spokesperson in Spanish. So we've been able to amplify our media budget that the GO committee has has approved for us for another budget cycle, which we appreciate, but also we've been amplifying our voice via the State Board of Elections efforts, and they do consult with us to ensure that the information is relevant and packaged in a way that it won't confuse individuals. Obviously, we're a small team. We've bulked up to 100. We're here to serve, and in any way you could help us, we'll greatly appreciate that. And the sample ballot is key. We've been pushing Make a Vote plan, and that's key. Once you make a vote plan, then we could meet the electorate halfway, and we could serve them to have a smooth, experience. And also, it does mitigate calls into the Board of Elections. We're kind of popular now, and so there's going to be a wait time. So use the resources, use the texting app, leverage the MoCo apps when it's ready, sample ballot, and information on our website, because a lot of the inquiries are very simple questions that could be answered if we provide the tools to the individuals. By all means, reach out to us at any time. We're here to serve, and we're all on the same team.
Thank you so much for that. I do want to, highlight that this council, previous councils as well, but that we have always been very interested and diligent in making sure that we would provide resources, especially for outreach, to make sure we enhance that civic understanding, especially among all of our diverse communities. And I'm hopeful that all of that work by Dr. Salaya and others, I'm hopeful that that will come in handy during this very unique time. And most definitely will continue to expand the messages, et cetera, more than ever, because if it's confusing for folks who've done this and are veterans of doing this, imagine for those who may be voting for the very first time. So again, thank you so much.
Quickly, I do want to acknowledge, I apologize for cutting you off. I do want to acknowledge Diane Vu and the Office of Community Partnerships. Obviously, we helped them by adding a texting prompt, census or CENSO, to 77788 to bolster their voice. And we've been collaborating where we train their outreach staff, enumerators, to do voter registration, to provide information, and hand cards, which are bilingual. And lastly, we have worked with Manda Food Bank, the East County Regional Services Center, GIRU, Gracie Rivera Oven at the Hub. We're looking at communities are being affected by COVID, and just because you're being affected by COVID doesn't mean they don't have the right to vote. So we've been distributing hand cards, very simple, for those communities and targeting those locations where they're trying to bolster up not only the census submission, which will affect us for the next decade, but also submission of ballot requests in these counties. So we're doing the little pockets and leveraging the resources to maximize those relationships in the community.
Thank you. I did want to ask a question, a couple questions. If someone mails in a ballot, and I don't know whether it's to whoever, to Ms. McLaughlin or to Mr. Shalek or Mr. Naiman, but if someone mails in a ballot and they take their ballot to the drop box or the Board of Elections and they realize that the Board of Elections rejects that ballot, are they notified? Is the person notified that you have rejected their ballot once it's dropped off?
Yes.
David, or Allison, yeah.
Yes. When a ballot is taken into our facility, the very first step, as soon as we begin to handle the ballots, is an initial sort of ballots by type. And one of the types is a ballot that does not have the oath signed on the outside of the envelope. As soon as we discover that oath is not signed, it's escalated to a staff member who goes into that voter's record and looks back to see if we have any telephone number or any email address or any way to contact that voter quickly in order to reach out with them and let them know that oath needs to be signed, and then to get that information perfected. If unfortunately, obviously, we do not always have a telephone number or an email address or a way to reach that voter quickly, they might not take our call. And so we do have a letter that we will mail to them. Now, there is a point, of course, where we run out of time. So we certainly want to get the word out now to voters to make sure that their ballot is signed. And that is, that's the first and most common problem that we would catch. We only rejected, I believe it was 440 ballots in the primary election, or 441 ballots in the primary election, because of that problem. And that was the most common reason why we had to reject a ballot.
With
All right,
the
and
exception
once,
of late ballots. Late ballots, we had
With the
many.
exception of,
We
right,
had,
why we had to reject a timely ballot.
right.
and with the, once they're told, how do they correct it? Do they come to the Board of Elections? How do they sign that affidavit?
They can come to the Board of Elections, they can print it out and sign it and take a picture of it and send it to us. We'll make arrangements however we can to get that oath and get it signed.
Thank you. On your written information and on your website, you do not list areas where there's limited access to drop boxes. And obviously I'm talking about Leisure World, I'm talking about Asbury, where the residents have a drop box and the people visiting the residents, but the community is not open to the public. And I understand why it's limited, and I understand why you would not, and you would tell the public that they're not allowed on the grounds unless they're visiting a resident there. But you're not putting it on any of the information. So how do the residents of that area know that there's drop boxes there?
Well, I can say, Councilman, and then I defer to Allison. From what I was told by staff, that the facilities themselves were very concerned about this being a public announcement. They didn't want people on their campus that
Right.
weren't residents or visitors. Certainly, if someone's there for a legitimate purpose on the campus, they can put it in the Dropbox. But the facilities themselves, they were hesitant. They weren't thrilled about the public being notified. From what I understand, this is hearsay, the facilities themselves will notify their residents. I don't know how they do it. They have a newsletter or whatever they do. But I'm told that the facilities themselves will notify the residents about the drop boxes.
Well, I would suggest that there could be a note on the written material on your website or wherever that says this is limited access for the public, but that the residents would know where those drop boxes are located. I think there's going to be people that don't realize they are there, and that's not what any of us would be after. So I would suggest you look at that again, please, so that you could put some additional information and be clear that, you know, that I'm not allowed on their property unless I'm visiting a friend in one of those places. So anyhow, I think that would be something that would be very helpful. Right now, if someone on election day decides that they want to go vote and they go to their regular polling place, and they realize that their regular polling place is not open, that you need to go to one of the voting super centers or voting centers or whatever they're called. Are there going to be signs up at those places saying, by the way, this place is closed, but there's a super center at X and Y? Are you going to do that?
There will be signage. Allison, do you have more specifics on the signage?
Yes, there will be signage, and the Department of General Services is going to help us get those signs out there. I would be remiss, by the way, if I didn't acknowledge, you know, all the other departments of county government that we haven't mentioned right now. And so while I'm mentioning the Department of General Services, the Department of Recreation has also been incredible in their support of this election and their support of our activities. And, you know, we can talk about that maybe in other questions as well, but I wanted to mention that. Yes, we are going to have signs at every place that voters are accustomed or would normally have voted in this election, directing them to the information.
If someone wants to register online and they're not tech savvy or have other issues or don't even have a computer or whatever, is there a way is there a number they can call? Is there a way that they can get assistance to help them to register to vote? Not obviously to cast the ballot is another issue, but to register to vote?
Allison?
Yeah, I was going to defer to Dr. Z on that one.
Oh, okay.
But I'll just speak to it policy-wise, but then in terms of, I know I'll let Dr. Z elaborate further. Absolutely. The voter who goes to one situation would be the voter who goes to the website in order to do the voter registration, but you do have to have a driver's license or an MVA issued ID in order to use that system. And so if you say no to the question about whether you have that ID, then it will kick you over to a paper form that can be printed out, and Dr. Z can speak to the ways that people can obtain that form. And then in terms of assistance that a voter can obtain, again, I'll defer to Dr. Z in terms of the various methods that we use to provide that form of assistance to voters.
Dr. Z, I know it's you, but I like saying that. How are you?
My pleasure. So yes, if the individual cannot leverage the texting prompt or the online Maryland online voter registration hyperlink, then they could obviously contact the Board of Elections, go to our website to download an application. We worked with Maryland State Board of Elections after the 2018 elections, and we translated said Maryland voter registration application into Korean, traditional, and simplified Chinese. So we kind of expand on the electorate. Our goal is to also encourage them to expand that to other languages such as French and Amharic. On top of that, if the individuals could also email elections@montgomerycountymd.gov, or they could email me. I've sent applications where I will print and I would mail them a set of applications in the language that they desire, or one of each, one in English, one in Spanish, depending on what they want. Additionally, I do tell them they could, and individuals can, make an appointment to the Motor Vehicles Administration. You have to make an appointment to register. They can leverage Motor Voter or apply there on the paper version. And lastly, we actually delivered a week ago the corresponding Maryland voter registration applications in multiple languages to the public libraries. We understand that the libraries are closed, but individuals could select books virtually, and then they will have a pickup. They'll set an appointment, and in that lobby, they're setting up a table to have those applications. So there's multiple options. If they cannot travel, let's say a voter in White Oak, they cannot travel to Gaithersburg, they have a resource at the White Oak Library, at the White Oak Motor Vehicles Administration. They could call us, they could email me, they could text us, and we'll meet them halfway.
Very good, thank you. And my last question is, I have received my ballot in the mail. My wife, as of yesterday, maybe today, she did get it, but mine's been there for probably 3-4 days. She has not gotten hers. So obviously, I guess from Mr. Shalleck's original discussion, she should not be concerned that the ballot has not gotten there. There's a great possibility that it will get theirs. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And I'm going to throw Allison under the bus because she deals with this every day. Have your wife call Allison. He'll get it for her.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but not everybody's going to. Well, I don't know that Allison can get the 50,000 phone calls this week. So yeah.
As we process the applications, we send it to the state and they get mailed out. So there's a rolling process, but she'll get it.
Okay.
But if not, call me.
All right, and believe me, Jim, I would. You and others, but for me, I wouldn't have done it. For her, believe me, I'll do it.
Councilmember Katz?
Yes, please.
I apologize for cutting you off. The one I totally forgot. I'm sitting in my office. It was a no-brainer. We're also open for service Monday through Fridays, 8:30 to 5 p.m. And you can register here. And the deadline is Tuesday, October 13th.
Very important, and it was important that you cut me off. Thank you very much for all that. And with that, Vice President Hucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks to all of you for being here. I appreciate all the comments and the colleagues of my colleagues, and thanks to Councilmember Glass for calling this. I really want to thank Allison McLaughlin and Dr. Z for your responsiveness to our office on constituent issues this year. In addition to all your other activities, you've been really terrific. I know you have hundreds of thousands of voters to worry about, and somehow you manage to get back to us very quickly every time we get a question or request. I want to revisit the very timely and thoughtful remarks by Chair Navarro at the beginning of this briefing. This is the first time the board has been before us since Governor Hogan made his decision to reject a predominantly mail-in ballot election. And as everyone knows, the Maryland Association of Election Officials conducted extensive outreach to the governor and the state board to advocate for ballots to be mailed automatically to voters as they were during the primary. That would have saved millions of taxpayer dollars at a time when we need those dollars more than ever, and the recommendation would have avoided voter confusion while also providing the greatest health protections for voters during this pandemic. And they recommended a lot of process improvements as well. So, Chairman Shallot, good to see you again. Thank you and all your members for all your hard work. Can you explain to everyone what was your position on the recommendation from NAEO and the position of the board on that important issue?
I didn't have a personal decision. I relied on the state board and the governor. But let me say this, with the new procedure, we have received 326,000 applications for ballots, and we expect more. We're still a month, we still have till October 20th to get a request. So people are responding. It doesn't seem, in terms of the numbers of requests we've gotten, that there's that much confusion. There's 326,000 people have gotten their application and sent it to us.
Right.
So, you know.
But Mr.
That decision was made by the state board and the governor, and we're here to implement, what they said, and we're doing a terrific job in doing it.
There's no question the final decision was made by the state board and the governor. On June 29th, at your board meeting, you had a vote, and my understanding is the board voted 3-2 on partisan lines against sending a letter to Governor Hogan in support of the MAEO recommendations. Mr. Naiman, can you shed light on this? I believe you were one of the two in the minority.
No, that's true. I made a motion that we support that recommendation. That was before we knew where the governor, at least where I knew where the governor stood. We just knew that the election directors and staff from across the state were recommending very strongly that we do have a mail-in, a predominantly mail-in ballot. They actually also suggested that we have additional vote centers compared to what we did in the primary. They had a very thoughtful proposal, and the majority indicated that they didn't think that it was an appropriate role for us to take a position. It's very similar to what Jim just said. But we thought that that it was a very good proposal that would have benefited from our endorsement. The other thing I should mention is that Jim is correct that we've had over 300,000 voters who've requested ballots, but as he points out to me on a regular basis, we have 700,000 voters. So we don't really know yet whether kind of how this is all going to play out. As far as all the numbers.
Right, but contrary to what Mr. Shallot just said, he said he didn't have a personal position. In fact, there was a vote, and he was in the majority 3-2, and you were in the minority of the two that voted against taking a position in support of the election officials.
Well, I'll let him describe his reasoning, but
sure.
Remember, but
there was a vote.
There was a vote as to whether we would send a letter, like you said. And the vote was 3-2 with Elise Barnes and I being the two.
Right. At times, our council and the board have worked together to achieve, I think, very important victories to make it easier for our constituents to vote and to reach more of them. And at other times, I've felt like the board has acted due to partisan motivations. And I believe that this decision for this election by Governor Hogan was one of the most partisan and short-sighted decisions I've ever seen. Whether the county board tacitly approved of the decision or he just remained silent, to me personally, it's very disappointing. The county board, under your leadership, Mr. Shallot, I believe should have fought for us, for our hardworking and overburdened county staff, for the election judges that will still come in and help us and put their lives and their health at risk because they know there's nothing more important than the right to vote. Only 16% of Montgomery County voters right now are registered Republicans, and yet Republicans control 60% of the board. And your hammerlock on the Board of Elections is mathematically more undemocratic than the Republican control of the U.S. Senate, despite support from a minority of national voters. Now, Jim, I understand you didn't create the system, neither did any of us, but the way I look at it, you serve as chair of the board due to a fundamentally anti-democratic law. So it's incumbent on you and the majority to bend over backwards to make sure that none of the votes that you cast display even the slightest hint of partisan motivations. We have an anachronistic state law. And it allows that inequity, I think, on the understanding that you're going to be fair enough to reflect the views of all the voters in Montgomery County, not just the 16%. I strongly believe a majority of voters in Montgomery County greatly disagree with Governor Hogan's decision to refuse to send everyone a ballot, which worked fine during the primary, over the objection of the election professionals, the nonpartisan recommendation of the election professionals. And we really count on you, Mr. Shalek, to represent Montgomery County, all of Montgomery County, not just the Republicans. So to me, you should have been our voice, and the majority should have, to weigh in on the single most important decision regarding the safety of voters in this election. There are many administrative decisions. This was not one of them. This was the single most important decision about how this election was going to be conducted. I think the governor put his partisan leanings about voting by mail ahead of the public health considerations. He decided to put lives at risk and to deter people from voting, period, full stop. And I believe you and the majority, Mr. Shalek, could have opposed that, but you abdicated your responsibility by voting not to use your voice to support the nonpartisan recommendations of all the election staff statewide. So I pray the decision made by Governor Hogan, due in part to your silence, does not needlessly contribute to the spread of coronavirus later this month. I won't know what to say to constituents whose relatives might contract COVID because they were not mailed a ballot to their homes. And I hope everyone is able to vote. I hope no one's confused. I have fought multiple times for more resources for you and the board to make sure you have everything you need, to make sure it's easy for everyone to vote, and I'll continue to do that. But I think that was a terribly bad decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Certainly want to associate myself with the comments of my colleague, Mr. Hooker. I wanted to follow up on an issue about transparency in the process of counting ballots. A bit over a week ago, I sent a letter to Ms. Jurgensen and asked her to send it on to the board. That was from a photographer from Getty who reached out because he had not been able to receive an indication of what access the media would have to the room where the ballots are counted. So I wanted to reach out. I think I could direct my question first to Ms. McLaughlin. Is it the case that there will be open access at all hours for the media to observe the ballot counting? And I just say this because there's a lot of assertions now about ballots getting thrown out. We're starting to hear that there's a higher error rate for mail-in ballots. I think there's a lot of anxiety that there could be, an agenda in reviewing ballots. I don't believe that's the case at all here in Montgomery County, but I think the way that we should lead on this issue is with maximum transparency and accountability. So I know it's a challenge with the COVID environment, providing rooms, that have access and that are large enough. But I do think that, the basic principle should be upheld that, and we're starting to count ballots, I understand, very soon, maybe tomorrow or in the next couple of days, just a basic principle that at all hours, at all times, there will be media access. Can you just share with me what the board's plans are at this point?
Sure, I'm happy to start on that one, and then Dr. Z may want to jump in terms of the role of the media in this, or the board certainly may as well. Let me describe for you what our current plan is for how we're going to be conducting the canvass and what our operational plans are, which are, of course, subject to continuing discussion and adjustment. We are planning, beginning on Tuesday the 6th at 10 a.m., to begin the canvass process. We are, for the first time in our operations here, going to be taking that process off-site. As I think you all know, we normally conduct that process in one of our training rooms here in the building, but we have removed, except for our front lobby, which has plexiglass at the front lobby, we have not allowed public access into any other aspect of our building to this point. And all of our training rooms, the election judge training has been taken entirely off-site as well, so that the only people who are in our building behind the plexiglass in the front lobby are our staff. So we're taking the canvass process off-site in order to allow for public observation, but also in order to allow for the fact that we have all of the operational activities associated with conducting early voting and conducting election day still going on inside our building, which they never would have been before for that canvass process, which used to take place only after Election Day. So our canvass process was entirely closed to the public except by live stream for the primary election. For their general election, we're planning to open that up with the processes that normally occur in our training rooms, which the public would be able to come in and observe, will be conducted off-site at the Plumgar Recreation Center. And at the Plumgar Recreation Center, if you're familiar with the gym in that area, to the left, there's sort of a bleacher area. We're not using the bleachers, but where that is, we're going to have seats. And that area is going to allow for public observation so that individuals can come in and observe that process as they normally would in the larger area of the off-site gym. Now, the next question is, what is the next step with the ballots themselves? Normally in our building, the ballots themselves would then go into the most secure area of our building, into our server room, and we have plexiglass walls where you can observe the scanning of the ballots through the plexiglass. We have the different areas where you might be able to observe the plexiglass from, have different operational activities that are going on before the election. One area is where we have live ballots, live machines, where we're doing the programming and the logic and accuracy testing. Another area is a hallway where we would have carts coming through. And a third area is a training room where we currently have workstations set up where we're doing the ballot application processing, and where we will be doing the intake of the ballots and the batching of the ballots. And so it's really challenging for us to, at this time, go ahead and open up those areas to public inspection, to public observation. And so the operating philosophy behind our current plan is that what one would normally to be able to observe in person in the same room would happen at the Plumgar Recreation Center in the same room. The aspects of that operation, and then we have a chain of custody for the transport of the ballots when they come back, and then they're scanned on our digital scanners in the more secure area of our building, then that would be available for public observation through a live stream, as it was in the primary, and as it would normally be observed through plexiglass. So I hope that sort of explains the philosophy behind where we are, recognizing that there are any number of factors, depending on the timing of how ballots come back and, and the board's decisions and their oversight role, as far as how the process might move from here.
Okay, so to follow, what's first, is it the case then that any reporter who wants to get an appointment to see what can be, to see any stage of that will be allowed, an escorted appointment? And secondly, was the letter that Councilmember Navarro and Chair of the committee she and I forwarded to Ms. Jurgensen, was that forwarded on to the Board of Elections? I might ask the board themselves if they had received that.
No.
Okay, so
I
not forwarded to the board for your consideration. Okay.
Jim, did you get it?
What?
Jim,
Get
did
the letter?
No, I didn't get it. But tomorrow we have a meeting tomorrow to determine, the canvass process and to affirm or modify what Allison's talking about.
Thank
So
you.
we haven't voted on this yet. It's tomorrow.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that you haven't voted on. Okay. So,
And Dr. Z has his hand up as well.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, for example, when Getty contacted the State Board of Elections on the 19th of August, we didn't really know exactly what this canvass would look like. As it trickled down and went through the individuals, and once Councilmember Hans Raymer got the notification on the 31st, the reporter needed images of our canvass, which were provided immediately.
no, that was never the request, Dr. Z.
I know, but we didn't know exactly the layout. So now that we know, and we're meeting tomorrow, I have a list from the press that have contacted us, because now we do know, and we're going to set a system in which individuals could set appointments and pick days and times, because we're limited by the number of individuals, just as Ms. McLaughlin just communicated how it's going to work. And so we're going to set up a table in which the press could select a date and time and hour to observe and to document, and they're welcome to do so. We want to do it in an orderly fashion, and keep them in mind, both we're going to keep the press safe and secure, but also our canvassing team, because we're charged to canvass all those return ballots.
Okay, just a few points here. I think it's problematic that the chair of the GO committee and a council member sent a letter to the director requesting that the information be sent to the board so that the board would know what the county council wanted, or at least what some members of the county council were asking for. I think all council members would likely concur. It's just in the moment Councilmember Navarro and I agreed to just send this along so that you're aware what council members are thinking about transparency, because we want you to understand that we want the highest level of transparency in this process. I am concerned about, Dr. Z, your initial reply that you sent Getty Photography canned photographs that you have, in your portfolio, which is like state media. Like that is not transparency. So I know you meant it well, and that would be an appropriate thing to provide to an organization or a community group. But for the media, we need to open the door, not provide them the information that we want them to see. So I'd like to ask the board, the chair or the vice chair, can you comment on what level of transparency you think is appropriate in this process, please?
Well, we are going to have the public and the press at the Plumgar facility. There's no question about that. And after the election, we're going to expand and maybe even move back to the board some of the canvas. I know that our director has been in touch with the health department dealing with the county, and she's going to report to us tomorrow on what their views are in terms of the staff's plans for the canvas.
Okay.
The health issue.
May I speak to this too, please?
Please, yeah.
Can I finish, Mr. Naaman?
Please, go ahead.
The health department has been in contact with our election director, and she's going to report to us tomorrow as to what they feel is appropriate in our plan. There may be modifications, and we'll know that tomorrow. But the health of our voters and our staff is our primary concern.
Well, the transparency of the election is also inviolable. So I know that there's a way to meet both of these needs. So can I ask, where is Ms. Jurgensen at this time?
She had a personal matter that she had to attend to.
I mean, certainly I think council members would like the chance to talk to Ms. Jurgensen, who is an employee of the county, and needs to know where the elected officials of the county stand on these kinds of issues. Mr. Naaman, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I had a few things to say. First of all, I agree with you 100%, Councilmember Reamer, that if council members send something to staff that you ask to be shared with us, it should be shared with us. And I'm very disappointed. Needless to say, I pay close attention to what all 9 of you, communicate to us, and that would be very significant for us to have. Secondly, the questions that you all submitted in advance, our staff submitted answers, and their proposal for the prioritization at Plumgar for the canvas was first, representatives of the political parties; second, representatives of the candidates on the ballot; third, the media. And I personally think that we will be talking about this tomorrow, as Jim said. I personally think that the media is in a very different category for a whole variety of reasons. They're very unlikely to stay the whole day and want to stay the whole day. And they're also much more likely to be on a deadline of sorts, et cetera. The third thing I wanted to say is Jim mentioned to you that the elections director met with the health department, which I'm thrilled about. I've been advocating for such a meeting for months. We actually had a vote at our last board meeting. It was 3-2 that said that the decision about the canvas had to be put off until such a meeting took place. And that was why a meeting took place, because thus far, at least I shouldn't say that was why the meeting took place, but I'll just say the facts are that the meeting did not take place before that happened. So I'm really happy that that's the case. My view is, as one who pays attention very closely both to election issues and to public health issues, that there's a bit of a balance here that has to be struck, because we do want to keep everybody safe. That includes the public, the media, the observers. It includes the canvass workers. It includes our staff. It includes all of us. But we also want to have sufficient transparency so that the public is confident that the job is being done correctly.
Right. We should model best practices, right?
Right. And that's not, that's not a partisan issue at all.
Right.
Democrats and Republicans, I think, both feel they just want the count to be done right, and they want to, one of the ways that you can be assured the count is done right is by having access to observe. It's not an exciting process. Most people who observe it, I'm predicting, will not stay very long. But the opportunity to observe it, I believe is very important. That includes being able to observe the scanning at the board, which, the board is actually, as Allison was describing the different rooms, the board actually has windows that face towards where the scanners are. It's about as exciting as watching somebody make a Xerox copy. I mean, it's really not an exciting thing to watch, but it does allow people, and I personally would allow at least one representative of, the Democrats and the Republicans to observe that, just so that, we don't have the problem that's caused by our telling them that they can't. And that's really where I'm viewing this. I think that how we present all of our entire process to the public is, and a very important part of the job. It's not just our job to count the votes accurately and honestly, but it's also to let the public know that that's what we're doing.
We know there will be accusations made after this election about the voting. So let's not be part of the problem. Let's be able to say the public was able to see this, and including the press, at all times, every day, all times. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Overnoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to begin by thanking Chairwoman Navarro for her steadfast leadership over the Board of Elections throughout her tenure on the council, and all of my current and former colleagues for all you've done to put the Board of Elections in the best possible position to address this unprecedented time. The nefarious, undemocratic, and absolutely just plain wrong rhetoric of the president has really cast a cloud over this election, and it's being done on purpose for very clear and transparent political reasons. But I am supremely confident that here in Montgomery County, we have the infrastructure in place to make sure we deliver a fair and accurate election. And I have that confidence because of the professional and incredible staff at the Board of Elections, staff like Dr. Gilberto Zelaya. I have been in meetings, all of my colleagues have been in Zoom meetings, sometimes 2, 3, 4 a night since the pandemic has started. And I'm not kidding. I think Dr. Zelaya has been in a third of those, educating the community and about what's going on. And his leadership gives me tremendous, tremendous confidence. So thank you, Dr. Zelaya. There are clearly wrinkles that will need to be worked out, clearly additional steps that will need to be taken in this particular election for all the reasons we know, but I do have confidence in this team. I do have a couple of questions, some of which we may not be able to answer, but a couple of months ago, the United States Postal Service was very much in the news because of the reductions that had been proposed at the federal level, and thanks to, I think, a number of efforts, including our media, to uncover some of those decisions that had been made, it looks like that put a stop to some of the potential cuts that would have really slowed down elections across the country. What is the interaction between our Postal Service and the Board of Elections? What does that look like? And does the board have confidence in the Postal Service's ability to partner with this unprecedented volume that we anticipate during this election?
we actually have a very close relationship with the folks that we work with at the Shady Grove Post Office and at the Rockville Post Office, which is of course primarily, who we work with here. And I do have to give credit to the U.S. Postal Service. For many years now, they were accustomed to taking the slings and arrows from election officials after every election. And over the course of really a number of years, they have worked to build a robust election mail system, an election mail infrastructure where they have regional election mail coordinators. And our regional election mail coordinator has been working with us, as long as I've been here at the Board of Elections for 8 years. And we know them. They work closely with us. They're able to help give us visibility into what is going on in the system. And we have spot checked the mail that's been coming in, and what we've been seeing has had postmarks that are only a day or two old. It has definitely been, the post office has been on this for us. Now, of course, we're well aware of the national stories. We, of course, voiced our anxieties when we began receiving media reports of concerns to our local folks at the post office. We have not seen those kinds of delays at this point here. We're well aware that voters are anxious, and so we've been really incredibly grateful for the support of the county and support of the state in getting the additional drop boxes located at all of the voting locations. And my observation has been that the availability of those drop boxes has been an incredible relief to voters who maybe don't use the post office a lot for other things, or have their own anxieties about the delays that they could experience.
I appreciate that response. Thank you. During that train wreck of a debate the other night, the president did fairly clearly encourage his supporters and to act out and actually observe elections as they were going on at polling locations. Could we go over the rules and policies and procedures just briefly and maybe at a high level on what is allowed and what is not allowed, so that we dissuade any potential resident or citizen out there from participating in that sort of irregular and, I would think and hope, illegal behavior? And I do appreciate the responses on the transparency post-election as we conduct the count, which, as you all stated very clearly, we need to work out the issues with the press, but that is an opportunity for citizens to observe. But could we just go over the policies and procedures on what is and isn't allowed on election day or at the polls?
Absolutely. And I'll speak to it at a high level. I will also then defer to Dr. Z, because he hands-on manages our program, where we do have election observers both locally, and we have election observers come from all over the country and the world to observe elections in Montgomery County. And so that's something that we certainly have a lot of familiarity with and experience with. Dr. Z, do you want to go ahead and speak to the election observation?
So the election observation, individuals must contact the State Board of Elections or the local Board of Elections to apply so they can have access to the process. Additionally, our election poll workers and our chief judges are also informed that there is a process in which those individuals cannot just show up and pull a chair to observe. So there's a process in place. They must be, the local boards must be contacted, and our poll workers and chief election judges and staff are trained as well. So there's a mechanism and there's a protocol they need to follow.
I appreciate that. And I'll just close with this, just again, expressing my appreciation. I know our local Board of Elections and many previous boards have done, I think, a good job of ensuring that we have bilingual capacity in the information that we share, and in order to be able to respond to questions as they arise. And so I think that we obviously will need to continue those efforts, particularly through this next election, but I think that is important. And David, I see you've got your a point you wanted to make. So
yeah, thank you, Councilman Albornoz. I did want to make the point that it is legal for people to be poll watchers, and I know that was not what Allison and Gilberto addressed just now. They were addressing more the outsiders who want to come in and observe our process. But it is possible for people associated with the campaigns and the political parties to be designated, and there are limits as to what they can do, what they can challenge, how close they can get. I don't know what all of those rules are independently, but it's not accurate to say that no one can come to the polls. And I also don't know if there are any special rules because of COVID, at this particular point, other than I'm sure that a mask is required. But maybe Alison or Gilberto can speak to that.
Right. Every candidate on the ballot and the political parties do have the ability to appoint individuals to go. There is a process where that information does have to be provided to us, and certainly the room capacity on a room is the capacity, and so it doesn't matter whether that's an election judge, whether that's a voter, or whether that is someone who is observing the process. And so each room is a little bit different in terms of the number of observers that can be accommodated and where, and so we will have, and I reference especially the international observers because that's when you'll get a busload. We do have circumstances where we have like an international group that will want to send an entire busload of people to observe the process at one polling place. And that's, that is something that we have to work and sort of plan around how we might accommodate that, where we might accommodate that, how we can deal with a group. And so that's the situation where we normally are dealing with, potentially numbers of people. But yes, a candidate on the ballot or the political parties do have the ability to appoint individuals working with our office to observe as well.
Thank you. And I'll just close with this. I do want to express my appreciation to all the members of the board for stepping up and your willingness to serve. I know you all put in a lot of hours, particularly around this time of year, every 2 years. And so thank you for that leadership and dedication. I do associate myself with some of the comments of my colleague, Councilmember Hucker, in terms of the political nature of those appointments, and do agree long term, it is something that we should look at systemically across the state. But in the meantime, I do, again, express my appreciation for all of your leadership and dedication and professionalism. Thank you, and I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you to the board for all of your great work up to this point. It is not easy to transition. Much of what we've seen in terms of how we have to manage county government and transition into a completely different kind of phasing. I understand it's not easy and it's difficult. So I give you accolades for getting us to this point. Obviously, nothing's perfect. There's nothing that's perfect. So we try and do the best to avoid all of the kinds of large outstanding challenges that we have standing before us. And so I want to address two quick ones. One, and it's kind of what Councilmember Albornoz touched on, which is around security. I am very concerned about security at polling places and intimidation, but more than that, as we had talked about the ballot boxes themselves being moved, although being watched by a camera, there have been comments on social media across the United States about folks, and their intent to somehow damage or somehow invalidate those ballots that are dropped off, especially in heavily Democratic areas and precincts. And so I'm just curious beyond the cameras, because the cameras certainly catch an actor doing it. But in the meantime, at that point, something could certainly happen to ballots. What are we doing to ensure the security of those ballots once they have gotten into the ballot box, or the person's driven off and think that their vote is counted? How do we make sure that that is actually the case?
I was going to go ahead and speak to that, but I think, Jim, you're muted. Were you trying to say something?
Jim, I think you're still muted.
There
we go.
Thanks. Thank you. Councilman, your question is well taken. That's a priority for us, the security of our ballots, our voters. In addition to the surveillance, the police department has a liaison that's been working with our director and staff. They're aware of all the drop box locations. They're aware of our voting site locations. They will be adjusting their ride-alongs and their cruising. And I'm telling you, our board has zero tolerance for any intimidation or wrongdoing at the polls. To me, it's a criminal offense. And if that occurs, we will get the law enforcement involved and either the attorney general or the special prosecutor, the state prosecutor. But we're not going to tolerate any intimidation, wrongdoing, interference with our vote. Zero tolerance, and we'll get the cops involved, and people that are willfully doing this should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Zero tolerance. Allison, I'm sorry. Allison?
No, you covered it. And just as we are, we work closely with, with the post office. We work closely with the police department, with the Department of Homeland Security. They've got their, trained ears and eyes on the ground onto the sorts of threats, that may be out there, and are keeping an eye out on the drop boxes as well.
So I really want to say I appreciate that answer. That is incredibly important. And I hope that, as Councilmember Jawando always says, for the millions that are watching at home, it's very clear that our Board of Elections is very serious about protecting the people's right to vote and ensuring that those ballots are going to be safe and secure. That being said, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, Allison, to where your relationship with the post office. It was last night, we saw a very concerning story on NBC4 where they highlighted the fact that stacks of ballots were actually left in an open area where it could be accessed. And fortunately, the person who actually discovered it called the appropriate authorities to make sure that those were taken care of and secured. My question is more along the lines of, because I certainly understand that part of that is the post office and you're not the post office. So we certainly need to make sure that our partnership with them and that our mail carriers understand what is allowed, what isn't allowed. And I think that you're working through that. And again, that didn't happen here. That happened in DC. So let me just be very clear. It didn't happen in Montgomery County. However, one of the things I am concerned about is what is the process? If a person does somehow get a hold of someone's ballot and send it in, and then they say, hey, I haven't received my ballot, similar to Councilmember Katz's example. So his wife hasn't received her ballot yet. And in fact, someone has actually commandeered her ballot and sent it in. How does the Board of Elections handle something like that, where she would then request another ballot, I'm assuming, saying that she hasn't gotten one? Is there a code on that particular one that invalidates it? What's the process to ensure that that person still retains the ability to be able to have their vote cast?
There is an identifier on every one of those envelopes, and we have I think it's, as people express anxieties about the process, I sort of take them back to back to basics in terms of the voter registration process, and that that's fundamentally the purpose of voter registration, is so that we can make sure that every ballot corresponds to an individual voter. And so the outside of each envelope has an identifying number that corresponds to its individual ballot tracking number for that ballot. And Dr. Z is actually showing a picture of, I don't know if that's his ballot on the screen, but we do have an individual tracking number that for every ballot that's issued. And that is also because we certainly do have situations where a voter might request a web delivery ballot, and they might change their mind and say they want to vote by mail, and then they might, come into our office to get a replacement ballot. And that's okay, because we have a log of every one of those ballots that have been issued to an individual. When we get them back, then we're able to identify that, and we're able to make sure that we only have one ballot cast and counted by every voter. Anytime we have an instance where, something looks odd, or we get more than one ballot back from a voter, then actually I personally I eyeball every single one of those as we go through our audit and we do our investigation, as we're making sure that we only count one ballot from every voter, and as we make sure that any indication that someone may have attempted to vote twice, we take photocopies of that evidence and we provide that to law enforcement.
Allison, thank you very much. That is a terrific answer, and I think that hopefully that will put a lot of people's minds at ease about some of the concerns about the post office and being able to deliver, and folks still being able to have their votes cast. And so kudos again for all of your great work. I think, again, that you guys are working incredibly hard. We know that there's still some more work that needs to be done, but certainly working in conjunction with us. And again, to the spirit of what Council Vice President Hucker and Councilmember Albornoz and Chairwoman Navarro were talking about before, we can all work together to make sure we're eliminating some of those obstacles. We shouldn't let anything stand in the way, partisan politics or anything like that. This is about people having the right to vote and have their votes cast. And I know that you all have pledged to do that. And so I'm looking forward to working with you to make sure that that happens for our voters here in Montgomery County. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you to Chair Shalek and Mr. Naaman and the entire staff. Dr. Z, I think you'll be on one of those many town halls with my wife tonight at an event. So he makes his rounds not only to the council members but their spouses as well. And that's how busy he is. And I know the work you all are doing is so significant and important. So thank you for all of it. I want to just underscore 2 points. I'm glad Council Members Albornoz and Rice brought this up. And I want to dig a little deeper. I think that there's a significant threat and concern of voter intimidation at the polls that was incited just earlier this week as was mentioned by the president. And we have seen in this county a little over a year ago, we had massive protests in front of our council building. There are people here that will listen to that cry and that call and come out potentially. And I think from what I've heard so far, I haven't heard a plan of action for if that happens, what we're going to do. I've heard Mr. Shalek, I've heard you say that there's no tolerance, and I appreciate that. But are you preparing for that actuality? And if not, why? And if you are, what are those plans? Because I don't think it's enough to just say, hey, if it happens, we're going to respond with zero tolerance. We have to have something in place to acknowledge that could happen and is likely to happen. So could you all respond to that, please?
Well, on election day and during early voting, the staff will be in contact with all the voting centers. The board members will be available. Once we get any indication of improprieties or intimidation, we will send staff there to see if it can be resolved. If not, it'll become a police matter. And they are aware of our voting center locations, our drop boxes. They're going to adjust their patrols on election day and early voting to keep an eye on the drop boxes, the voting centers. So there'll be a quick police response if it's something that we can't resolve. And we're going to have staff at all these sites to keep their eyes and ears on the situation. The minute something seems to boil or starts to percolate, we're going to get hands-on, try and resolve it with staff. If not, the police will be involved. And they've given us that assurance.
Okay.
And I'll just elaborate on that to say that in addition to those communications, we have a physical presence of both the police department and the Office of Homeland Security here in our office for every election on election day. And increasingly, we've been doing that more during the early voting period as well. And so we not only have them, a short phone call away, we have them physically here in our nerve center so that we are able to take advantage of their eyes and ears out there in the community, whether that is some sort of threat is perceived that they're aware of, or whether that is some phone call that we've received we make them aware of, or even if it's much more, sort of the mundane, but in many ways,
sure,
potentially more disruptive issues of power or water or, infrastructure disruptions that can occur. So we're poised and ready for those issues in any election, and of course attuned to the possibility of that in this election.
Great. And I think, with what you mentioned earlier, Ms. McLaughlin, that the lines will be longer because of the social distancing requirements and will go further away. I'm sure you're thinking about making sure that there's not some misinformation or people that are messing with that process, and that you'll have staff, checking those lines periodically to ensure that. Is that a fair assumption?
We will have election judges outside. We also have locations that we've identified where we know we're going to need crossing guards. And of course, we have the ability to to scale that up as needed as well. And I do see that Dr. Z has his hand up too.
We will also provide wait times on our Board of Elections website. In addition, we will have wait times on our texting. So if individual will text the letters EV for early voting and their zip code, they will get the 3 closest early voting locations, address, and wait time. So an individual who, let's say, lives in Silver Spring and they text EV and their zip code, they would get on election day, per se, on election day, the letters are VC for vote center and your zip code. And so hypothetically, someone who lives, let's say, on Silver Spring, Texas, VC, and their zip on the 3rd of November, they would get Montgomery Blair, Silver Spring Civic Building, and let's say Wheaton High School. And if they look at the corresponding wait time, and Wheaton High School is 20 minutes, but Blair is an hour and Silver Spring is an hour, then I would advise them to select Wheaton High School.
Great, thank you. And the other comment I wanted to make briefly is just I associate myself with comments of other colleagues in regards to the change in election procedure. And I was very vocal about this at the time, as was the whole council, about that for COVID safety reasons, but also to avoid voter disenfranchisement at a maximum or at a minimum confusion, which has been rampant about receiving your ballots in the mail. Under no scenario should we have changed the process from June to now. We should have done the same thing. And I know you all didn't make this decision, but you did make the decision, as was discussed, to send a letter to the governor approving of that policy. And I think that's something that I'm glad to hear, that we have many people who have requested ballots. But this is something that should have happened already. And so we're going to need to look into this, going forward. I just think there should be a law. And I've talked to some of our state legislators about this. Whatever you do in the primary, you should do in the general election. And you shouldn't, unless you're expanding voting, it certainly shouldn't be restricting what you're doing, And so I'm very concerned about that. And but I appreciate what the efforts of the board to get the information out. And remind people about that October 20th deadline to request. So associate myself with the comments of Councilmember Hucker and others who brought that up. So thank you for the work you're doing, and really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Council President. I will be very brief here. Everything that I was going to ask has been asked and sufficiently answered. Some of them have been asked again and answered even more thoroughly, and so I will not ask some of the same and simpler questions, really focusing on the mail and the counting and the voter intimidation concerns. We all share them. I'm glad that we've had this conversation to flesh them out. And I just wanted to take a point. The only thing I will say that has already been said is to thank again publicly and acknowledge Dr. Z and Allison, who have been absolutely incredible during what is a completely unprecedented election. Not only your work, not with me and with my staff, but your responsiveness when we've had a question, when residents reach out, how quickly you've been able to answer, how proactive you've been getting out there, Dr. Z. It's been great to share some of the spotlight with you, although I don't deserve it nearly as much as you do, but it really is a testament to the county that we have, to the professionalism of our Board of Election. The most sacred thing that we have in this form of government is what you all do every day, and the way that you are safeguarding it in some impossible circumstances is really a shining example. It makes me proud to be a Montgomery County resident and proud to be able to represent our community. So thank you for that. Thank you to the board. I associate myself with some of the disappointment of decisions that have been made up to this point, but we are where we are at this point, and I am pleased with the fact that we are now doing whatever we can to make sure that every Montgomery County resident can vote, can do so safely, and can make sure that that happens. The safety question, has broadened from what our concerns are about safety, and I appreciate that not just the COVID-19 protections, which are unprecedented, but the voter intimidation questions, which I think is also unprecedented, frankly, are something that you and your team are working closely with county officials to make sure that we are providing this most basic and most sacred right and obligation. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to all of you for your commitment to making this system of government we have function.
Thank you. Thank you. And that concludes. Thank you all very, very much for being with us. We appreciate the update. We are your partners, and if we can be of assistance, please do not hesitate to let us know how we can be of assistance. So thank you very much. We're going to continue on with our meeting as the agenda is called for. The next item that we have is the council's. Bye-bye. Thank you all. The next item that we have is the council sitting as the Board of Health. There's an introduction. The Board of Health regulation to adopt an Executive Order 117-20, COVID-19 local order, amending and restating order dated September 22nd, 2020. We were also going to have a public hearing. The Board of Health regulation to adopt an Executive Order 117-20, COVID-19 local order, amending and restating order dated September 22nd, 2020. This is a public hearing on a Board of Health regulation to adopt the Executive Order 117-20, COVID-19 local order, amending and restating order dated September 22nd, 2020. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Each individual will have 2 minutes to speak. Individuals will be alerted as they approach their 2 minutes and may be disconnected. Also, there may be technical glitches during the public hearing that may need to be addressed by our staff. So thanks in advance for your patience. Ms. Susan Kennedy can call on people for the public hearing. Ms. Kennedy, do we have any speakers for this public hearing?
Mr. President, there are no speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you very much. This public hearing is now closed. And with that, we are going to we're now leaving as Board of Health. We'll be back as Board of Health, but we're leaving as Board of Health. And there's an introduction and an action. Do I need to suspend anything for the rules at this point, Ms. Myhill?
You do not.
Okay. This is an introduction and an action, a resolution to approve an Executive Order 117-20, COVID-19, local order amending and restating order dated September 22nd, 2020 as the County Council. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Navarro.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Friedson. I see no speakers. Is that still accurate? Councilmember Reamer.
Well, thank you. First of all, I think it would be helpful to walk through the order. So I don't know how, Mr. Council President, you were planning to do that.
I was, but I didn't know if anybody wanted to speak first.
Well, I mean, I have some comments.
Ms. Myhill, would you like to please walk through the order with us, please?
Sure, and I'll note that Dr. Gales and Dr. Stoddard are both on the call and can answer any specific questions, but essentially the changes in this order are that it would allow a food service establishment to apply for a late night alcohol sales permit. That permit would allow for alcohol service from 10 p.m. to midnight. I've put on pages 2 and 3 of the staff report. I've highlighted some of the highlights of this particular permit, but the program in its entirety is on Circle 13 and 14. Specifically, I've highlighted for you that the permit is available to a food service establishment that does not have a prior history of COVID-related closings or citations. The food service establishment must designate a staff member or hire a contractor to monitor and enforce space covering and social distancing requirements. The food service establishment must suspend the sale of alcohol after midnight and ensure that alcoholic beverages are collected from patrons by midnight. A food service establishment that violates these requirements would be subject to immediate revocation of the permit, suspension or revocation of their license to sell alcohol, and or fines. And the program will be automatically suspended under certain circumstances, including data related to the positivity rate or the number of cases of COVID. I don't know if Dr. Stoddard or Dr. Gales has anything else they'd like to highlight.
Do either of the doctors the doctors in the House, either one of you have anything in addition to add?
Just that, so the portal will be we'll follow the same format. The previous temporary permits have been offered through the Alcohol Beverage Service web portal. It's very quick. We've already had over a dozen apply. I'm waiting for your all action to give them the confirmatory that they can move forward and issue permits. And so that's sort of the way the process will flow.
Dr. Gales, I saw your head shake no, but we'll give you one last chance here. Okay, still no. All right, okay. Councilmember Reamer, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief, but when we talked about this last week, I said that I had some grave concerns about it. I know that restaurants are struggling. I know this is a really tough time for the entire hospitality sector, but I'm just concerned that by taking this step, we're accelerating down the path of reopening for certain services that really may not be our highest priority. I know that most restaurants really don't have a lot of business after 10. I think last call at 10 o'clock probably covers the need of most restaurants. I think what we're really talking about here is indoor bar type service. And I just don't think that that's an opening we should actually undertake at this time. Again, we're talking about people who are gathering indoors, and they're not going to be masked because they're drinking and they're eating, or they're certainly drinking. So I just feel that it's going to lead to more cases, and I am concerned about the message that this sends overall. That we're kind of moving faster down a path of reopening when I just don't feel we have a plan really to hold the virus down to a level that we need to reopen schools. And, that's really a big concern for me. If we're going to take some risks with targeted openings, I think it ought to be the services that we feel are the most critically important. And right now for me, that would be small groups of MCPS students, maybe students with more needs, students with challenges, getting the resources at home that they need to thrive in this difficult environment. So I know this was well crafted. I know it was very carefully considered. So, but I think reasonable people can disagree, but I don't plan to support this measure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no other speakers. It was moved by Councilmember Navarro and seconded by Councilmember Friedson to approve this action. All those, this executive order, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is Councilmember Giwando, Councilmember Friedson, Councilmember Navarro, Councilmember Glass, Councilmember Alvarez, Councilmember Rice, Vice President Hucker, and myself. All those opposed, Councilmember Reamer. So it passes 8-1. We are now going back as the council sitting as the Board of Health, and this is the action item on the public hearing that we just had. Is there a motion on this?
So moved.
Councilmember Friedson, seconded by Councilmember Navarro. Madam Clerk, this is a roll call vote, so could you please call the roll?
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Giwando?
Yes.
Mr. Giwando votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
No.
Mr. Reamer votes no. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Albarnos?
Yes.
Mr. Albarnos votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes. So that too carries 8-1. Thank you very much. That concludes our agenda. So thank you all for being with us. We are officially adjourned. Thank you.